So often, folks don't realize there is more money up front to buying a house than just the down payment. We have folks coming to us with their down payment saved and ready to buy a house, then thrown off when they find out there is more money needed to be prepared for. We sat down with one of our trusted lenders, Larry, to get some professional insight to help folks be prepared. Hi, I'm Brandy, one half of the WB Nobles real estate team. My husband, William, and I enjoy helping people make informed decisions about where to live, work, and play in Western Washington. Whether your move is right around the corner or still a little bit further out, we're here to guide you every step of the way. And remember, all our contact details are right below, so feel free to reach out. And if this is your first time to our channel, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out on our fun adventures or juicy insights. We asked Larry the lender how he would help clients understand exactly what closing costs are. Our big takeaway from that conversation is changing our language a bit to provide some additional clarity. We are working to integrate a phrase Larry introduced to us, funds to close, which includes the mortgage down payment, the various fees considered closing costs, which cover the services necessary to ensure a thorough and efficient transaction, as well as lender's fees, inspections, and home warranties. And thirdly, the prepaid home ownership related fees. Let's hear what Larry had to say.
So let's, I want to change your verbiage a little bit there. A lot of people use the term closing costs.
Yeah.
I'm going to redirect you to a different phrase called funds to close.
Okay.
Funds to close means what does the borrower have to come to the closing table with to buy a house,
Right.
which is probably really the more important piece.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the piece that's really pertinent to them, because closing costs are divided. Some of them are divided up between the seller and the buyer. Some of it's just the seller's responsibility. Some of it's just the buyer. So I like that term.
Okay, so let's visualize 3 buckets. Okay, the first bucket we're going to talk about is your down payment. Depending on what loan program you utilize, if you use an FHA loan program, that is 3.5% or 3.5% down of the sale price is your down payment portion. Conventionally, you could get into a house as low as 3% down. Okay, you can go into, there are some loan programs where you have 0% down. Whatever loan program, that is your first bucket, is your down payment. That is one of the features of the funds to close.
Perfect.
Okay, that always has to come from the borrower. It could come by way of their own asset accounts, or it can come by way of gift funds.
Okay.
It cannot come from seller concessions. Okay, the seller cannot pay the buyer's buyer's down payment.
Okay.
The other part is called your closing costs. That's another piece of the funds to close. Closing costs have to do with the different fees that are involved. There's a fee that you're going to pay to the lender. Some lenders, they used to, and there might still be some like this, that charge 1% of the loan amount. If you are looking at somebody like that, you might want to try to find somebody else. Find a flat fee company like my company. We use a flat fee regardless if you're buying a $1 million property or a $250,000 property. It's one flat fee. Everything else in that closing costs are going to be your third-party fees, such as usually an inspection, which is usually paid outside of closing. So that's done outside of closing.
The inspection right away as soon as we get under contract. Yep.
An appraisal. Appraisal needs to be done on the property. That sometimes partially is paid outside of closing, but that is part of your closing costs. The other part of a closing cost are things like your credit report fee, title fee, or title insurance fee, I should say. Your escrow fee. That's whatever escrow company is doing the service to close the transaction, right?
Yeah.
The third party to close the transaction. And recording fees. Those are all closing costs for a loan.
And you said title fee, right?
Yeah.
And
Title insurance.
there you go. Title insurance And even sometimes we look at home warranty.
Yes, and a home warranty, I honestly think about it. If you buy something, it's nice to have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
I would say, and home warranties are very inexpensive. Really, I think you can get them anywhere from, I'm guessing, $200 to $300. That can save you thousands of dollars potentially, right? All those closing costs that we just talked about can be covered by the borrower's own funds. They could be covered by seller. We can
negotiate that in the contract.
That's correct. They can be paid by gift funds from a family member, but those are the closing cost portions. So we've covered.
Something you really need to plan for.
You should, and depending on the home that you're buying, is it a hot home that just went on the market?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to get closing costs? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Something that's been aged unit that's been on the market for 6 months.
We might be able to negotiate that the seller covers those costs for you.
Correct, right?
Or
So
portion at least.
a portion or whatever it may be. So that's what we can look at that part. Those are the closing costs. So we've covered down payment and we've covered closing costs. The third bucket is what I want you to look at is called prepaids. And what prepaids means are your upfront taxes and your upfront homeowner's insurance. Homeowner's insurance needs to be prepaid usually a year in advance, okay? So if and that's gonna be dependent upon who the borrower chooses as their provider, but we usually estimate between $90 and $100 a month for homeowner's insurance. So I always use the number 100 because it's easy for your mind. Think that you're going to need to put $1,200 plus 2 months, so 14 months into an escrow account to establish your homeowner's insurance premium. I would think that the way you should look at your escrow account or to establish the escrow account, which are your prepaids, which would also be your upfront real estate taxes, depending on the time of the year that you close. If you close in October, they need to take in the state of Washington at least, they need to take a full 6 months of real estate taxes up front.
Okay.
If you close certain times of years, they're going to collect a certain amount of months.
Okay.
So that's important to know. As your loan officer, I can go over that with you. Your title person will also go over that with you. So that would be quoted. Think of that escrow account as another savings account for you so that you don't go behind on taxes or insurance.
Okay.
The lender does not want that to happen, so that's why there's an escrow account there.
Right.
Now, if you ever sell your property or refinance that property, that escrow account will be closed out, meaning that money will come back to you
Oh, okay.
because you're going to have to start a new escrow account. So it kind of washes each other out, right? Depending on the time of the year that you close. Many times I've refinanced people and they're like, hey, I just got a big check from an escrow company. What do I do with that? And I tell them anything you want, it's your money. Because they've established a new,
Yeah.
A new account.
right.
Yeah. We then went on to identify what types of costs folks should be aware of that are related to funds to close, but are reoccurring throughout the life of your mortgage. What are the non-reoccurring versus recurring costs? So I'm assuming it's a reoccurring payment that needs to be made.
Which comes out of your monthly payment.
Okay, so that's bundled into your monthly payment.
Right. So you have what's called principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, PITI. The principal and interest payment is covered. The taxes and insurance portion of that payment, let's say your insurance really was $100 a month and your taxes were $250 a month, that amount goes into an escrow account, and in the state of Washington, taxes are paid April and October. So when April gets here, that escrow account pays that taxes, and then as each month goes up, it builds up for the next October payment.
Got it.
So that's why you have your homeowner's insurance, the same thing. That little portion goes in to the escrow account, and homeowner's insurance is paid one time a year. So when the next year comes up, it's built up enough in that escrow account to pay that premium.
So you're reoccurringly paying these costs, but you're not really the one having to manage that payment.
Correct.
Okay, the folks that manage your mortgage and that escrow account are making those payments for you. So
Yeah,
they
it's
don't
getting
have to worry about you defaulting on that.
right.
Okay, Getting to the big question, how much money do you need to have to cover the funds to close? What we got out of this part of the conversation was that if you plan for about 3% of the home price in addition to your down payment, you should be pretty well set up for covering those closing costs. Each scenario is, of course, different, and this does mean that you need to have a good idea of what price range you're looking to get into. Larry had some insight around this.
Closing costs, I'm going to just throw a number out there. The closing cost portion is probably going to be somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. Okay. Your prepaid items are probably going to be somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000.
Got it.
So, but that can fluctuate. So that's why I don't want to be boxed into a corner and say, somebody said that it would be this amount. It really depends on the prepaid items. If you find a house that you have a beautiful view of the sound, and your taxes are going to probably be higher there, right? So that's going to increase the prepaid portion of it.
Right.
That's why I'm saying it's, like I said earlier, it's important to find somebody that has a flat fee as far as the origination cost. Now, don't be fooled by these lenders that say we don't have an origination fee, but we do have an underwriting fee and a processing fee. That's all origination, right? Just don't do that.
Some folks ask if closing costs can be rolled into the mortgage. What this looks like is going in with a high purchase price offer and asking the seller to cover the closing costs. So the seller's take home at the end of the transaction is actually less than the price you are receiving lending on to cover the purchase. And here's what Larry had to say about this strategy.
But rolling them in to the strategy that's used, that I've seen used, is if the appraisal comes in higher than what it may be. Let's say the sell price is almost $500,000, and they agree to sell it at $510,000, and then the seller pays $10,000 towards closing.
So let me clarify. The way that you would roll it into the mortgage is you would to buy the house at a slightly higher amount and have the seller pay the closing costs.
Correct.
And that's the way you're rolling it into the mortgage. But when the issue with that being is when the appraisal comes up. If the appraisal appraises significantly lower, then you're not going to be able to get the loan for that higher.
A lender's not going to do a loan on a home that appraises for less than what the sell price is.
Gotcha. So that can be tricky.
Could be very tricky. So you got to make sure that the appraisal, if you feel that there's enough value in the home, that it'll do that. I've seen people do that before. I'm not advising that that's the best way to do it. I'm not sure what type of, what the implications can be on that. And the other thing is, if someone's buying a $500,000 home and the appraisal comes in at $490,000, you're out of contract. Now you've got to negotiate that price. Either the seller's got to come up, the seller's got to come down to $490,000, or the buyer's got to come in with an additional $10,000.
Right. Yep. We were discussing some common pitfalls Larry sees, and one of the subjects that came up was zero down scenarios. There are loan programs such as a VA loan or down payment assistance programs that allow folks to come to the table with zero money down for their down payment.
Zero down, remember we talked about 3 buckets. Right. They could still have that zero down, right? But they still need funds to close.
Yep.
And that would be if the seller's not willing to pay any closing costs and or prepaids, right? The other 2 buckets, then that means the borrower has to come up with that.
Right. Or so if you're in a competitive market.
Or if you're in a competitive market.
I really want to make it clear that it's not super common to ask for sellers to pay for the closing costs. It can be done, and in certain situations it works really well. If you're coming in a competitive market, you're going to want to have your funds to close on hand rather than asking for sellers.
That is 100% correct. Yeah. You need to make sure that you have enough to cover your upfront taxes and insurance and closing costs, right? So as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, if you're just kind of gauging, between $3,000 and $4,000 for closing and $3,000 and $4,000, so let's call the number $8,000. Right. Then even if you're a zero down situation, you still need to have funds to close.
$10,000 to cover all the other costs.
That's correct.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
As we're closing up our conversation, we asked what kind of advice do you have for first-time buyers to help get them prepared to buy a home?
It's all about saving, putting money aside, really. So I think the serious first-time home buyer is going to knuckle down, buckle down, and do that.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Advice from Larry the Lender on funds to close and how to be prepared for that part of the buying a home process. Our biggest takeaways from that conversation are, first, be prepared for funds to close, which includes 3 buckets: your down payment, the miscellaneous fees that are all wrapped up into closing costs, and the prepaid costs or upfront costs for the loan itself, which is your taxes and insurance. Secondly, wrapped up into your monthly payment is your taxes and insurance payments, which are your reoccurring fees. So your monthly payment is more than just paying off the loan itself. And on top of your down payment, you should plan for between 3 to 5% of the purchase price of the home to cover your total funds to close. Zero down scenarios do not mean there are no closing costs. Plan for closing costs even if you're looking at programs that don't require you to have a down payment. And lastly, create a budget and start growing your savings. Find what tools or methods work best for you and put as much of the process on autopilot. I actually just listened to a great Huberman Lab podcast with Morgan Housel, who breaks down why automating your budget and savings is so important and effective. The link can be found in the description box below. And if you have any additional questions or tools that have worked for you on your home buying journey, please leave us a comment below or reach out. We would love to hear your experiences and are always looking to add to our knowledge and resources. And if you would like to work with Larry, give us a shout. We are happy to connect you. So please make sure and like this video, subscribe, and ring that bell so that you never miss out on our insider tips about life in Western Washington. And remember, if you're planning a move to or within the area, whether next month or next year, we'd love to help find you that perfect place to call home. Just give us a call, send us an email, or click the link below to schedule time to chat. We've got you covered, rain or shine. Until next time, explore, dream, and discover the best places to call home.